Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our final event for Seattle Black Film Festival 2020. We are so happy that you were able to join us, and we are so happy to invite our guest, our very special guest, Veronica McKenzie, straight from London. But before I get to that, I want to thank everyone, all the filmmakers, and all of the audiences who have joined us from all over the place for our first fully online festival. Normally, we host our festival out of the Langston Hughes Performing Arts Institute in the historically Black Central District of Seattle, Washington. But everybody knows the craziness that's going on right now, so we just had to cook something up to make it work. So huge shout out to Couchathon and our partners there for helping us make this happen this year. So without further ado, I want to kick it off. For our discussion this evening, we are joined, like I mentioned, for our final film, 9 Nights, with a short film that'll just be before that film called Flame. And we're joined by Veronica McKenzie from London. So you can imagine, do the math of what time it is in the morning there. And we're also joined by festival curator Zola Mumford. And by the way, I'm Andrea Stuart-Lehalle, festival director. That piece always gets lost. And we are joined by Elisheba Johnson, who's a curator, public artist, and administrator. She has a BFA from Cornish College of the Arts and was the owner of Fair Gallery Cafe, a multi-use art space that held art exhibitions, music shows, poetry readings, and creative gatherings. For 6 years, Johnson worked at the Seattle Office of Arts and Culture on capacity building initiatives and racial equity and public art. Johnson is currently a member of the Americans for Arts Emerging Leaders Network Advisory Council and has won 4 Americans for Public Arts Art Year in Review Awards for her work. She currently co-manages Wanawari, a Black arts center in Seattle's Central District that uses the arts to build community and resist displacement. So Elisheba, we look forward to hearing a little bit more about that. And I'd like to go ahead and pass it over to you, Elisheba, to get our conversation started and to help us get kicked off by learning a little bit more about Veronica. Good evening, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea and Zola, for inviting me to be here. And Veronica, your film is just lovely, so I'm excited to ask you a bunch of questions about it. Yeah, just very quickly, I'm actually streaming from Wanawari right now. Wanawari is a 5th-generation Black-owned home in Seattle's Central District, which is our historically redline neighborhood. And Seattle's experienced a lot of gentrification and displacement over the last 20 years. So Wanawari is a social practice art project that masquerades as an art center that really looks at how we can use the financing for the art center as a way of keeping Black homeowners in this neighborhood. So you can read more about us at wanawari.org. But Veronica, one of the things that we do here at Wanawari is we curate local, national, and international Black artists because we're really interested in a diaspora conversation around Blackness. And your film really much reminds me of all of those goals that we're trying to reach, right? The Caribbean culture of the 9th night that is present in a place like London, right? And how those traditions are followed. So can you talk a little bit about, one, just like what it is for you to be a filmmaker in London, and kind of, what inspired you to make this film? And you're muted. You're still muted. Uh-oh.
Unmute. Hi, can you hear me now? Hi. Yeah, so firstly, thank you so much to the Seattle Black Film Festival for inviting me and for screening the film. It's amazing because we had a bit of a short festival run, and this is the end of our festival run, and I think it's just a really wonderful way to, go out with a Black film festival, because we really support Black film festivals, and Black arts. That's what I'm about. And I think the film just really came from a place of, I wasn't seeing any stories that reflected my experience in London. We tend to do the same kind of stories when it comes to, and I don't even use the term Black film, do you know what I mean? I just use the term films by Black artists, in terms of support from the wider artistic community, those films tend to be about drugs or living on an estate, which is like living in the projects. A lot of the films that they support are quite negative, and I wanted to tell a story that was just like an everyday Black family. Do you know what I mean? And show the dynamics within a Black family. And I remember going to one person after I'd written the script, and then they tried to get me to change it and to make it, make the death like a knife crime or a gun crime. I had to point out to them that Black people die every day in just really average ways, normal ways. Like we die every day. It's not all dramatic. It's not all, as a result of crime. So there was like a big gap between my perception and what, people thought I should be telling as a story. So I'd written the script, and actually it was around for years. People were going, it's a really good script, we really like it, but like one day, when I say years, I'm talking about 8, 9, long time. And one day I was talking to a producer, actually, who's Spanish, a woman called Yolanda Torres, amazing woman. And she just said to me, why are you waiting on somebody to, give you permission or to do it for you? You could do it yourself. And I was like, no, I'm a writer. Do you know what I mean? I need someone to do this. And she's like, no, you can do it yourself. You're just, you're going to give away your power. Just, do it yourself. And that was the first time anybody had ever said that to me, because I hadn't had that in my mind. So then I kind of changed course and thought, okay, how am I going to do this now?
Wow. Like, can you just unpack that a little bit? Like, you're a writer, and then you decided to go into directing, producing, right? Getting all the financing for your first film this war. How do you even start that?
It's kind of necessary. I mean, I didn't start off down this path. So first of all, I was, writing. So I'd write a little bit here, a bit of comedy. I used to write lots of comedy sketches. TV and radio, kind of bubbling along doing that. And then I started writing longer pieces. And then as soon as I wasn't writing comedy, it was like nobody wanted to hear, do you know what I mean? Nobody really wanted to hear what I was saying. Like if I was writing something funny, like a little sketch, then it's like, okay, all right, that's cool. But then when I started to explore like more dramatic stories, longer form pieces, and then so I went to study, I did a screenwriting course, like a long screenwriting course. So that was my way in. And really, it was because I just didn't understand how the business worked. Like I didn't understand how everyone was saying, oh, you've got something that's really a good script, but we don't want to make it. And I was like, what does making it mean? Do you know what I mean? Like nobody talks about how you put money together. And I just found all these doors closed. And I'm such an inquisitive person, and Google is my friend, so I just kind of, I just started digging away and like, how do you do this? And how do you do that? And how does that work? And do you know what I mean? And I realized that I'd have to learn more skills. That's one of the things I would absolutely say to any filmmaker. Because from what I've seen in the business, if you don't, you need to learn as many skills as you can and understand every facet of the business. Because someone will come along and they'll go, oh yeah, we'll do this for you, we'll take care of that. Do you know what I mean? And if you don't have an idea, you won't, you'll easily either be parted from your money, parted from your vision, parted from the outcome. Out of necessity, I've had to learn like nearly every facet of the business. And I found that people didn't want to tell me. Do you know what I mean? They were like, oh no, you stay there, you wait for somebody else to, implement your vision. You don't need to know all of that. And when somebody says to me, you don't need to know something, then I think, I really need to know that. Like, it's a red flag now. I want to know. So just, just be really inquisitive and ask a bunch of questions. And that's kind of what I did.
Well, a big part of this film, right, the central theme of this film is grief, right? And one of my really good friends started talking early in March when we knew that COVID was starting to pick up steam, that we weren't really ready for like this type of grief on this type of scale. So one, I think, you know, one obvious question is, how are you navigating this moment, right? This pandemic moment as a Black filmmaker? And what is it like across the seas? Because I'm sure you've heard about how America's dealing with it.
Yeah.
So we don't need to go into that.
Yeah.
But also just why did you really want to use grief as a theme? And I have my own thoughts about why that's so powerful, but I want to hear from you.
Well, I mean, I would say from the UK perspective, the stuff that we've seen happening in the US, you know, in terms of the protests and the demands and the consistency, amazing, inspiring. Just, do you know what I mean? Like, we're here protesting as well, but our demands are maybe not as clear because our kind of political system is a little bit more kind of covert, really. It seems that what you're dealing with is much more kind of in your face. This system here is a little bit different, still as racist, still as, you know, exclusionary and problematic with the police. But it's just in a slightly different way. So we've been really inspired by the fact that, you know, in the US, people are out on the streets, are making demands, and do you know what I mean? And they're putting themselves front and center. It's, you know, it's necessary, and, you know, here it's happening. So we are watching, we are watching what's happening there. I would say with the theme of grief, so it's kind of like, it's interesting because I was doing comedy, and I'd had a loss in my family like years ago, very unexpected, just completely, you know, just took me out, really. It was completely unexpected. And then all of a sudden, you know, because I'm from a Caribbean background, Jamaican background, and all of a sudden people started turning up at the house and saying, you do this and you do this. And, you know, so it was really overwhelming. You know, I was quite young, and it was kind of like I didn't really understand what was happening. And it was interesting because all the elders seemed to know what to do. And I just, you know, kind of like looking back on it, I love the fact that they knew what to do, even though at the time I didn't understand what was happening. So actually, when I actually started to think about writing a longer form, I sat down to write a comedy. And then this story kind of kept coming in. And I was just like, this is not funny. It's not working. You know, this story just kind of kept, you know, kept bubbling up. And I also wanted to look at, one of the things I really wanted to look at is reincarnation. You know, I wanted to look at what does reincarnation mean, you know, in terms of the Black community, in terms of the way I was raised. You know, we never talked about reincarnation. I think I must have read an article and gone, oh, do you know what I mean? That's an interesting theme. But I actually sat down to write a comedy. But I think having now given my space to write something and said, okay, I'm going to write something longer term, you know, long form, like a screenplay, this came up, you know, and as it came up, I was like, okay, I feel like I need to, you know, explore this. I feel like I need to, you know, because we don't talk about, you know, we don't talk about grief, we don't talk about, and especially as Black people, we're supposed to just suck it up and keep going. You know, I do remember that when I lost this person in my family, I had a full-time job, and I think I took 2 weeks off. And, you know, I'm not even ready to come back. Like 2 weeks has not even touched the sides. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm, you know, and I remember someone saying to me, oh, you've had enough time. And I was like, and that was a cultural thing. I do think that's a real cultural thing, because I think as Black people, you know, I think, you know, that if somebody passes away, we don't think, oh, it's 2 weeks and then back to normal. You know, especially in the Caribbean culture, you know, you might have to go back to some semblance of normality, but you don't say, oh, 2 weeks and now we can go back to our job and go back to, it just felt like a real kind of slap in the face. Do you know what I mean? So I wanted to just explore you know, what would happen if you could just be allowed to grieve?
Right.
You know, so that's what, yeah.
Well, and I felt like, you know, I'm always feeling, for lack of a better word, this grief too, of my connection to the continent, right? And like all of those rituals and ways of being that were taken from my people, you know? So like, I was watching this ritual of the ninth night and being like, oh, I wish we did this in family in Chicago and South Carolina. You know, I could see how from night to night, and people should go look it up online. It's quite interesting history and really beautiful. But it started out as a mourning, but now is almost like a party and celebration of these people that you've lost. And so I was really, you know, thinking again, like that is another really important tool that I know that Black people could use as really kind of understanding grief is like a whole bunch of emotions, right? One of my best friends, when her mother passed away, all of us went to her house. We like ordered pizza and got wine and watched like really silly movies. So I think even though you said it was a comedy at first, I think there's a connection there of like needing to laugh and like look at old pictures. So yeah, I just think you tapping into that is really important, and it's cross-continental understanding.
Yeah, because I think we're kind of connected in that way in terms of, you know, like one of the things that I remember that happened, and it was my mum that passed away very suddenly, was that these people just started talking about her and just like running all these jokes and, do you know what I mean? And I'm like, that's not my mum, that's not my, but of course they were talking about my mum before she had children, do you know what I mean? So when she was like going out and raving and partying and all of these stories came out, you know, so even though I was kind of resisting, you know, it was kind of really like beautiful to hear these stories and their recollection of, you know, the person, not just the mum figure or the dad figure, or do you know what I mean? It's about the actual essential kind of core of that person. And I think it's just, you know, and especially with COVID, I mean, see, the other thing is with COVID, I feel like we could see this coming. Do you know what I mean? Because I do feel like, you know, if you look at, and I always said, if you look at a country like China, and I was in China in December, so I just got back, I think, the second week of December, and this was already bubbling around. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I said, and I told her, I remember saying to a friend, oh, this is going to be a lockdown. And she's like, oh God, you're so dramatic. Do you know what I mean? Like you're always going, you know, because I'm quite dystopian, you know, I'll read anything dystopian future. So I'm like, yeah, I read sci-fi and all that. So I'm like, this is going to be a lockdown, you know. And she's like, no, you're so dramatic. And I said, no. I said, before you know it, we're going to have to be stocking up and blah, blah, blah. Because I just said, look, if you look at a country like China, if they shut down a city, do you know what I mean? Just take heed. They're shutting down a city. Do you know what I mean? And they're not letting anyone in or out. That's how dangerous this is, you know. But I do feel that a lot of us kind of, no, it wouldn't happen. Do you know what I mean? And that was kind of like, you know, because we look at China as being over there. Do you know what I mean? And we don't look at ourselves as being really globally interconnected. Do you know what I mean? What happens in China, do you know what I mean, affects us in the West, you know, and vice versa, you know. So when I saw the lockdown, you know, I'd already said to my family, listen, you need to start getting your things in place, making sure you got your money, making sure, you know what I mean? And they just thought I was just like, I've lost it, you know. And then a couple of weeks before I actually locked down, a friend of mine was like, I think we need to start taking action, you know. And I think especially, I would say maybe in London, Black people are a little bit more like, we don't trust it. You know what I mean? Like if the government's saying everything's all right, we're kind of like, nah, let's get our supplies. So we were kind of ready for it, but then when the lockdown came, it was still such a, like I've, you know, obviously never seen anything like it, but it was still such a shock. Do you know what I mean? That we're locked down. Do you know what I mean? Like really, you can't go out. Yeah, it was very, very tough for a lot of people. I mean, one of the things that happened is that the editor of the film, she actually passed away from COVID. And that was such a shock because not only is she just integral to the success of the film, because we sat side by side and edited it, and just she was amazing, and an amazing, supportive, do you know what I mean, very experienced. You know, she held my hand and she explained how editing works to me, and you know, you can't, she was amazing. You know, so she was one of the casualties of COVID, Liz Webber. And so it really was close to home, you know, what we went through. And so I just kind of feel sad that she hasn't seen, do you know what I mean? But yeah, I'm just going to read this long.
Oh yeah, that question.
Yeah, okay.
Before we get into that question,
yeah.
I wanted to just talk about a few more things in the film. There's like these constant refrains in the film.
Without giving anything away.
I'm not going to give anything away. Yeah. But one that really stood out for me was the deceased have to give up everything that they know. Can you tell me about that line? It's so powerful about this transference of knowledge. And I keep thinking, actually, like it's very, very like timely, but I've been really thinking a lot about my grandfather who passed away in 2004 and all the embodied knowing that has been transferred to me, even though he's still not here. So yeah, just like you have so much poetry in this film. I just thought if you could talk about that.
Thank you. I think there is something about, it's about, I think it's about ancestry. Do you know what I mean? It's about, and this is one of the things that, because, you know, if you look at everything that's been taken from us as Black people, do you know what I mean? Everything that's been stripped from us, and yet we still have this core of something. Do you know what I mean? We still have this core of connectivity, you know, to our ancestors, even if we don't, like, even if we're not privileged to know our great-grandfathers and great-great-grandfathers, we have a sense of them. Do you know what I mean? And we have a sense of kind of like the knowledge that's been passed down. And it might not be, you know, it doesn't have to be actually like mouth to, you know, word to word knowledge, that kind of, you know, I'm telling you a story. You just have that sense of, you know, the lineage, do you know what I mean? And the ancestors, and the fact that they struggled, and the fact that they strived and they tried, and do you know what I mean? And you have that kind of hovering, do you know what I mean, over you. Yeah. So for me, it was that feeling of, you know, we live in a very kind of individualistic society. Like, you know, the society constructed that we're supposed to be just concerned about ourselves and our success and what we're doing. Do you know what I mean? But if you think for a moment of your family and your ancestors, then, do you know what I mean? You realise that, no, you're a product of where you came from. Do you know what I mean? And people worked and suffered and had joy and pleasure, but all of those things kind of comes down the line with you. Do you know what I mean? And you kind of have this knowledge sometimes that you haven't even, where did I get this knowledge? You know, like my mum used to say some things, and I'm like, what is she talking about? Some of these Jamaican sayings, you know, but now I'm older, I can understand. When I was young, I was just like, oh my God, she's talking about donkey kick this. I was like, what does that mean? You know, but now, as I get older, I can understand that these kind of sayings, you know, go way back and they make sense. You know, you just feel that kind of, there's something more than just you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like that it's like a gift that they give back to you, right? Like, this is all I learned. I'm leaving the earth. And so I'm gonna like make sure that you have all of my knowledge before I leave. The last thing that I'll just quote, there you don't have to speak to it. It's just so beautiful, and it gives a lot to think about. And it's another refrain, which is, a spirit cannot be earthbound. Both sides have to give up. It's a tug of war. And I was going to read the question, but
I'll hop in really quick and just remind everybody you're watching Seattle Black Film Festival. Thanks everybody for joining us. We'll have Veronica, who's joining us from London. Her film will be coming up in another 20-25 minutes or so on our Couchathon stream and on the Langston Seattle Facebook this evening. Veronica, I wanted to hop in with a quick question for you. earlier in the conversation, you talked about all of the closed doors that you encountered as you went through the early phases of developing this story, and then it took many years before the film actually got made.
Yeah.
I want to toot your horn a little bit. You are a winner of the 2019 Pan-African Film Festival Narrative Feature Director Award. Has that opened any doors, or what other experiences or opportunities or awards have opened doors for you, and what's next for you?
It's interesting because because when I'd finished the film, this is so indicative of how it works, maybe in the UK. So I'd finished this film and I thought, okay, what am I going to do with it now? And I thought, okay, I'd apply for some festivals and it didn't hear anything back. So I thought, okay, nothing. And then a friend of mine, Paulette, said, why don't you apply to the Pan-African Film Festival? So I applied to it, got in, ended up going to LA, and it was amazing because it was just around Christmas that I applied and it was February that happened. And I was like, oh my God, somebody likes the film. It was just, so then I went to LA, and it was like a complete surprise because there was no roadmap for what happens when you finished, when I finished. And then in terms of opening doors, so in LA, so I got some offers from sales agents and, distributors contacted me. From the UK, nothing, not a single thing. The silence in the UK is deafening. Do you know what I mean? And so I think, so I was still thinking, well, is it a good film? It must be, you know what I mean? It's kind of like a weird thing because at home, nothing. Like a big fat zero, not even phone calls or messages or we'd like to see you to talk about this or we'd like to, nothing. But yeah, I was talking to people in LA and, I've got distribution offers and everything else. So there's a real issue with trying to tell stories, particular stories in this country, in the UK. It's a really big issue and it goes deep. Do you know what I mean? Because, had I made a film about gun violence or gun crime or something like that, it would have been, oh yeah, let's talk to Veronica and everything else. But it's like, it's just, and I'm not saying that I should be hyped or anything like that. It's nothing to do with being hyped or anything like that. But it's just the fact that the silence is deafening. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I can only read into that. And then it just made me wonder, what kind of, future as a Black filmmaker I have. Do you know what I mean? Because I don't feel like I'm gonna get support for the projects that I want to do, the voices that the stories that I want to tell. So I'm reaching out. I'm trying to reach out to American filmmakers, American production companies, because you've got the diversity. You can tell different stories. You've got the width to tell different stories. It's quite. It's hard to get your head around sometimes. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like we had this thing where Black actors leave the UK, go to Hollywood, do well. Do you know what I mean? And then the UK will go, oh yeah, they're quite, yeah, all right, let's give them a little something. Do you know what I mean? And it happens all the time, and whatever they say about changing things, it doesn't change. It's almost like because you're right under their nose, it's a very strange one, so I'm definitely looking at, working with, whoever, I'm up for collaborations. Do you know what I mean? And I do think that for me, what's happening in the States, even though I know it's very difficult for Black filmmakers in the States, you've just got more, you see more. It's just more, more Black films, you've got Black audiences, you see more Black content. So you've got stuff you can choose from. Yeah, it's just a weird one. This country is weird.
Yeah, you're kind of
strange.
speaking to this myth that, some of us Americans have that, across the pond, race falls differently, but it still kind of falls in the same way in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully with like things like Tyler Perry's studio and things like that, that will open up opportunities
Yeah.
for more independent emerging filmmakers. I would
Yeah.
hope to be able.
Yeah.
Your comments also really perfectly went into the first question. Somebody said they would love the panel's perspective and voice to the topic that often comes up. And we're seeing resurgence now about actors playing roles that aren't them. Like Black British actors playing a Black American role, or a white actor voicing a Black animated character, and so on. So I think they want your thoughts on that.
Okay. I mean, this is
Not exactly colorblind casting, but a little bit of colorblind casting in there, but a little bit of
yeah. No, I mean, I just think that with the actors, because I've seen so many actors that that I've grown up with and know that are just not being able to work in the UK. They're not appreciated, but they're really, really good actors, and then when they get to Hollywood, LA, the fact that they're Black and British, I must say, must add something. It's this little bit of difference. It's this little bit of something, it's a little bit of a distance, maybe, and it's really tricky, but maybe because Black Americans, and Black American actors, they're just there. Maybe the same way, like I said, like, because when you're just in a country, you're not, they value something different, So when Black actors who are British go over, they're seen as being better. They're not necessarily better, but they're a little bit different. Maybe a bit kind of, a bit exotic, a bit and I think it might just be that. I don't believe that Black British actors are better than American actors. Black American, African American actors, I don't think it's that. I think it's just that there is this difference happening. And, maybe if you're leaving here and going to Hollywood, maybe you don't have a plan B. Do you know what I mean? Maybe you just, like look at Idris Elba, he worked on The Doors for 8 years. I'm not sure. But for me, I think the people that are casting in Hollywood, or in the US, they want to cast somebody who's, different. That's what it must come down to. They don't want to cast, African American actors, even if they're good. They want to go for the, so, they're kind of at fault, really, isn't it? Because they're casting.
Well, and I think you're also speaking to something we talk a lot locally about in Seattle. Seattle, in a lot of ways, has really incredible visual art, theater, film. We're a great film community. And people reach like a certain level of their career and they like top out, but they don't feel like they're like really at a professional level or experts. And so they have to leave to go get that type of opportunity. And then all of a sudden they're invited back for like the great retrospective at home. They're like, why didn't you support me here? Which I think you're really touching on is what would it mean for the UK to support their Black filmmakers and their Black art, actors and build them up so they didn't actually have to leave.
And I mean, because it's been happening, I would, for the last 15, 20 years, and because it happens so consistently. Do you know what I mean? It's I suppose for an actor who just wants to work, it must be soul destroying. Do you know what I mean? So you don't have the option but to leave, because a lot of them, they don't want to necessarily leave, but they want to work, and then if you're going to get the opportunities in another, in Hollywood, LA, you're going to have to go. I mean, I know so many people, I mean, I lived in LA for a bit and I just kept bumping into Brits everywhere. Because there's so many Brits in LA, the UK has a chronic problem. The UK has a chronic problem. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if I said to you, name 10 Black UK directors, do you know what I mean? Like on the world, you wouldn't be able to, or named, it just has a chronic problem. And you do have to go away and have somebody else validate your talent, and then they're interested. And it's so annoying. You know, it's almost like, it actually feels like, you know, the people that make the decisions are not confident about their ability to see, assess, and put their money on talent. Do you know what I mean? They're not confident. Because if you see something good, you're going to be like, that is good. I'm actually going to put my hat in the ring and say, that is really good. Do you know what I mean? And stand by it. But there's a lack of confidence to do that when you're talking about black actors, black filmmakers, black storytellers. You know, they always say, oh, we've got a training scheme. We've got a course you can go on. I don't want to go in any more courses. Do you know what I mean? We've all coursed out. We've done so many courses, so many training schemes. You know, this is what they keep coming with. You need some more training. And at the end of it, you don't get anything. You know, we've got chronic problems here.
So we have another question in the chat from Chanel. Chanel says, I feel like they don't want to cast an African-American actor because out of Black people, they see the worst, which is from the media. So any Black person abroad is better than a Black American in the eyes of the white media. I felt this way about Harriet and Queen and Slim. Any thoughts? Weren't both of the characters in Queen and Slim both from outside the US?
Yeah, they were. I think they were both British actors. But it comes down to the cast, you know, the casting director. Do you know what I mean? It comes down to the casting director.
You can't actually pretend that like the royal theater teachings of the UK aren't important or something, you know what I mean? Like, or maybe they are, but like, you know, I thought like Idris Elba and a bunch of other people are like trained in this. I mean, get in another conversation about whether or not that's
I mean, they are trained because to be an actor in the UK, to work an actor, you know, you've got to do normally your 4-year degree, then you've got to do rep, which means you go on the road, then you've got to do the Shakespeare, then you've got to do the classics. Do you know what I mean? So yes, I'm not saying they're not well trained, they're fantastically trained. Do you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, when you've got 2 actors in front of you, the casting director is a person, do you know what I mean? And the director as well. They're the ones who are making the decision. Do you know what I mean? So I would be interested to talk to them to see why they make those decisions, because this is really about what the casting directors are saying. And I've not heard that in the conversation. Do you know what I mean? Like we're asking the wrong people in a way. Do you know what I mean? Because we need to ask casting directors and directors, why did you make that choice? What influenced you? Because I remember with Get Out, I don't know who said this, but someone said that with Daniel, he looked innocent. Like he had this innocence, which they said they couldn't find in an African-American actor for that scenario, because there's a level of knowing. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know if that makes sense, but do you know what I mean? He had this kind of thing of going into this situation completely innocently. So, you know, I just think, I mean, I would like to know myself, you know, I would like to talk to casting directors about that and just see why they make those decisions.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if we were going to unpack that a little, I mean, that's kind of saying that somebody who grew up in America has this embodied knowledge of slavery in this way that a white person, you know, going to your white girlfriend's house is you're going to be a little sketchy anyway. You know what I'm saying? And I wonder, I think the UK has a lot of work to do with their relations to the continents that they colonized, but because a lot of folks can, I believe, move back to the UK from those countries and things like that, I don't know if the dynamics are different. So I don't know if you want to speak a little bit about kind of.
It's very, you know, there are a lot of people in the UK that they will say, oh, the UK is not as racist as the US. And they feel that that's an okay statement to make. But it's completely not true. It's not true, because the US, from my understanding, the racism is in your face, forcing Black people historically to make other choices because you were actually excluded from doing things. Do you know what I mean? So you went and had your Black colleges because you were excluded. You went and had your black banks because you were excluded. Do you know what I mean? So that exclusion forced African Americans into action. Do you know what I mean? And into some autonomous state, even though we know now, you know, like we're reading history about the places that have been torn down, the towns that have been burnt down and everything else. But that exclusion, do you know what I mean? That kind of line in the sand forced African Americans, it seems to me, to be autonomous, to try and build something for your own communities. In the UK, we never had that. Do you know what I mean? We never had a Jim Crow situation. We never had that kind of, that, you know, segregation. But what we did have, and it's even more insidious, do you know what I mean, is such a deep level of racism that you can never do anything for yourself as a black community. You cannot, you know, we had one black school, maybe two black schools. If you try and do anything for the black community, there's so many other people that are going to pick it apart. It can't happen. Why do you need to do that? You know, we're not a racist society. You don't need your own space. We don't have black banks. We don't have black banks. We don't have black film studios. We don't have black, do you know what I mean? We barely have a black press. So because everything has been integrated, do you know what I mean? And it doesn't allow us any agency to develop anything separately. You know, the actual situation in terms of what it means to be a black person in the UK is very different, because we can't look and say, oh yeah, there's a company that's been going 4 generations and 4 generations of a black family that's owned it. We don't have any of that. Do you know what I mean? So in a way, the racism and the situation of black people here, it's quite dire sometimes when you look at it. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like we're still trying to get a piece of the pie and get representation. Do you know what I mean? And at the same time, we're still looking for role models. Whereas I think in the States, you do have some role models. Do you know what I mean? You have role models that own companies, that own networks, that own black banks, that, do you know what I mean? You know, that own big, you know, manufacturing companies. You know, you have role models. So you can say, okay, oh yeah, black lawyer, there's black legal firms. You know, here we have a couple, but we're way behind where we should be, really. So I would, you know, so it's a weird one, because having had that kind of like in-your-face racism, you know, in the US, which you've had to deal with and suffer with, do you know what I mean? Physically, mentally, emotionally, everything else. Out of that has come some autonomy. Do you know what I mean? By necessity. But we didn't have that. We haven't had that in the UK. So it's really, again, another one, hard one to get your head around. Do you know what I mean? Because we're all equal, but yet we're always at the bottom of everything.
Well, it's almost like the assimilation, which is what assimilation does, has made you more invisible in some ways.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But like, you know, you said you don't have any role models, and you were very much a role model, right? Like you have this huge, it's incredible. And so, you know, Seattle's got this really incredible, like I said, local film community that's really known all over the world. Like the Seattle Black Film Festival, this is the 17th year. We have SIFF, Seattle International Film Festival.
Yeah.
We are really supportive of filmmakers, and I wonder, who are the people in your community that are your peers? I know you said that it's very small, but you talked about, unfortunately, the loss of your editor. Who are some people lifting each other up in your community, in the film community there?
I think we have a filmmaker called Campbell X. He's doing some amazing stuff. Just amazing stuff around diversity, like looking at gender issues, and just you know, something kind of outside the mainstream. Then we have Amma Asante. She's doing some really good stuff. She did Belle. She did I think a United Kingdom. She did I think she's directed about 4 feature films. And what's really beautiful about her films is that she takes a really serious subject, often a historical, you know, something about the British history, the British, you know, like either Victorian, the relationship between the state and Black people. But she finds a very human story to give us this information and to educate when you're watching it. Like if you look at Belle, Belle is the story of a Black, I think she was Victorian or early Victorian, a Black Victorian woman, do you know what I mean, who was part of the landed gentry, do you know what I mean, and had a lot of money, and her picture is in Kenwood House, which is kind of like a small Buckingham Palace. So you've got a picture of a Black woman in this setting which you wouldn't expect to find it. Do you know what I mean? And nobody's really asked the question, well, how did she get there? But Amma Santi in her film, she's like, well, this is how she got there. And these are the issues that she faced, you know, as a Black woman with money, being part of the upper classes. Do you know what I mean? At a time when, you know, there was this whole thing around slavery happening, you know, like there were questions going through Parliament about whether you could be insured for your losses of your slave, but there was a Black woman at the heart of this high society at the time. So she does really incredible work, and you know, beautiful films as well. But there's a lot of us making films. There's a lot of us making films and just trying to get our vision out. And I think it is a small community. Do you know what I mean? But I think it's burgeoning. You know, I think I think we're more like, okay, let's do this now. You know what I mean? We need to start, you know, producing our work. So yeah.
Well, I have just one more question. I'll also check in and see if Andrea or Zola have any. But I wanted to know what you're working on now. I know that we just got out of quarantine, barely, but you know, are you writing a new script? Are you planning a production?
Yeah, I'm always. This is the thing. I'm always got a lot of ideas, and then I have ideas that I've had for ages, and then I kind of put them down. And then a few years later, I'll go back and go, oh, that wasn't too bad. Let me just work on that a little bit more. So I am, I have a new idea, because the idea for a feature, you've got to really love it and want to spend the next 3 years with it and do all of that to raise the money and to see the vision. And also I want to do something that's a little bit more challenging. So like a little, stretch myself a little bit. So I have a feature that, script is done. It's a comedy drama. I think we need a bit of levity at this time. And it's a comedy drama. It's still about family, because that's the work I like to do is about family. You know, it's about what makes us who we are, and I keep coming back to family dynamics. This is a comedy drama, and it's about a grandfather and a niece and their relationship, and how they can, support each other, and how they go on this journey. So I'm just trying, at the moment, got the script, trying to raise money to do that, looking for collaboration. So if anyone's out there, if anyone wants to collaborate, and that one, that one I think is going to be, again, a different type of film from a Black perspective, I think, because the vista, I think it's certainly nothing we've seen from the UK in terms of Black film. And I'm really excited about this one, because I think it's going to be challenging, but it's also just going to be a lovely, heartwarming family drama, just showing real Black people. But I've got TV thing that I'm working on as well. I've optioned this book, and that's an amazing story with UK, Nigeria, and it spans 200 years. It's a big epic TV thing, and that's so big budget. I kind of look at it and I wonder if it's ever going to, it's a big budget thing. So that's also something that I'm, talking to people about.
That's great. Good luck producing that. And you made me
Thank
think as
you.
you were making out the list of Black British directors we should look out for. I will hold you to helping make us a reading list
Yes, yes,
to post on our
absolutely,
Facebook after, so we can discover,
absolutely.
more storytellers across the
Yeah,
diaspora. It's always
yeah,
great to hear.
absolutely. Yeah,
I've got one last question for you before we transition over to actually seeing your film.
yes,
There's a lot of talk right now, basically in the States, we're having a moment where a lot of eyes are turning to Black creation. And over even the last 5 years, you can see a really dramatic difference in the kinds of Black narratives that take flight, that get
yeah,
audience, that get some kind of following, and transitioning, as you were mentioning earlier, the pressure that you receive to make the death of the main character's brother violence related or gun related or crime related, because those are the kinds of stories we expect to hear about or to see about Black people, or
yeah,
that we want to, or audiences, not us, but general
yeah,
audiences want to see. Over the last few years in the States, there's definitely been a takeoff, a departure from in accepting narratives that are like your narrative, just about a family or grief or topics that aren't necessarily linked to crime or violence.
yeah.
Do you feel that happening in the UK? Maybe not yet. And if not yet, what's it going to take? What's going to open those doors?
I mean, there's an amazing series by Michaela Cole. I May Destroy You. Um, so she's a very individual, a very individual voice, very strong voice. She's just done this TV series, which is doing really, really well. In terms of film, to be honest, I don't know what it's going to take, because I don't see the change. What I see in America, I look at America and I'm just like, oh. Do you know what I mean? I actually look at America and I'm just like, oh God. Do you know what I mean? It's amazing what's happening, from our perspective. Do you know what I mean? Because you've got so many, you've got Issa Rae and Lena Waithe, and then you've got your Tyler Perry, then you've got your Will Packer, then you've got your, it's amazing what's happening. We don't have that in the UK. I think we're very much at the beginning of that process. And what it's going to take is financing. Do you know what I mean? We need to be financed to tell the stories that we want to tell. Do you know what I mean? So we need to do the deals that allow us to do that. And it's really, really difficult because, when you're trying to get something financed, they always say, oh, who's going to want to see this? Do you know what I mean? It's that thing of who is the audience? And there's an idea in their head about, Black people not being like a credible audience in a way, or it's a really interesting thing. I don't think I'm answering it well. Do you know what I mean? But I do think that there is a lack of financing for projects that are outside the normal narrative. And I'm hoping that's going to change. But to be honest, at the moment, I'm seeing so much stuff happening in America. If I was in the States, I'd be really excited. Do you know what I mean? I would be excited because I would think the possibility, do you know what I mean, is very much, it's there, it's happening. I think it's very much different in the UK. We're still trying to figure out, is it happening here? Do you know what I mean? We won't know for like 2 or 3 years what the impact has been. Yeah.
Veronica, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, we're excited too. And I feel like I'm kind of old school where I started with 16 millimeter, right? And I was lucky in that I actually had a Black film woman professor, Zainab Davis. This is like very early 90s. And she was showing us things like Handsworth songs and things from the Black Collective, Maureen Blackwood. And mostly because of my parents. I mean, we're Southerners, we aren't even Caribbean, but my parents would have this very global view where you always pay attention to what's happening and look for the primary source information. And if the information comes from Black people themselves, and so it's a documentary account, even better. So that got me started on trying to seek out art, music, fiction, nonfiction writing, and film and more by the various different Black people in the UK, and trying to, I feel like there's an audience, I hope, developing in the US, even though a lot of exciting things are happening here with Black media for Black British creations.
Okay.
COVID-19 may set us back a little bit, but I do feel like that interest is there. It's kind of ironic in Seattle, just before everything shut down in March, the Seattle Art Museum had this fantastic retrospective of John Akompo's work, and they had these beautiful viewing rooms set up, and he came here for the opening, and
wow,
it was going to be fantastic, and everybody was going to come, and then COVID-19, and that would have exposed a lot more people. But I mean, there are just so many incredible talents. And it's a matter of hopefully finding ways that we can collaborate. A lot of it will have to be online in the near future, maybe not, we don't know. Trying to build that audience, whether it's through smaller festivals like ours. You know, in my dreams, we have you here to like teach a workshop or something, you know, like physically in person, just having a chance to meet people directly and hear their experiences producing, and just having these fantastic ideas and meeting that audience question. Like, what's the audience for this?
There is. I mean, and I think we've got, I can't remember his name, Alvin. We've got so many talented people have moved to LA. Do you know what I mean? Like DPs and, you know, actors and filmmakers. They've moved to LA. You know, so
people gotta work.
And then that's the thing of, you know, and there's lots of filmmakers coming out of the Caribbean as well that I don't know about. Do you know what I mean? So it's a connection between the UK, the Caribbean, the States. And all supporting each other as well. Just kind of like really just, you know, supporting each other and being part of the community. Because sometimes it doesn't feel like we're part of a community because we're so kind of, you know, dispersed.
You know. And even the Caribbean connection that was so strong in the 20s during the Harlem Renaissance, you know, with people like Claude McKay being part of that circle with Langston Hughes. Before, people looked up to Toussaint Louverture as a hero. My own brother's middle name is Toussaint. So
wow, okay.
And you know, for me, it's like, oh yeah, this is like a regular thing, right? But maybe being more intentional about that and the creative work we can do together. Encouraging audiences to watch a wider range of.
I think the audience is definitely there. I mean, I know the audience is there because, you know, we watch different, you know, we can watch anything. We watch a wide range of films. We don't have to watch a particular type of film. And I think the audience is definitely there. But in terms of, you know, getting films in front of the audience, you know, sometimes there's not barriers, but sometimes it's tricky to get the films to the audience, to raise, you know, to kind of even market, you know, sometimes even to market a film, or it can be expensive, it can be hard, or to, you know, run an advertising campaign and stuff to get people, you know. But we have a couple of companies, like we've got a couple of, like We Are Parable, and there's, I can't remember, it's just lost, but we've got a couple of organisations that are raising audience development. So that's what their function is. And they bring films in from all over the Caribbean, from the US. They have screenings. Do you know what I mean? So we do have that audience development work happening. But it's about producing more content as well, more content, so we can kind of share the content.
And to help share things, where can people find you on social media? Because we want to know all about this and what you're doing.
Okay, that's a good one. I don't know how much you're going to find out. Not much. So you can 9 Nights Film on Twitter. My own social media is VMac1. So VEEMac1. I'm not great on social media. I'm just going to tell you that now. Do you know what I mean? And then I'm on Instagram as well. I'm a late convert to Instagram. I love it. I do really. I know I do. I scroll for hours. I do. It's terrible. But I'm on Instagram as well.
The same handle for Instagram?
Say that again?
VMac?
Oh God, I think so.
Is your Instagram handle the same?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Sorry.
Filter.
Yeah, you'll find me. Yeah, I'm not one of these people that post a lot because most of the time I don't know what to say. Do you know what I mean? So I go on and I do a lot of liking. Like I like, and support people. But yeah, I don't post an awful lot. You know, but the thing is, if you do like the film, you know, please, you know, go on and say, follow and everything else. You know, if you don't like it, don't say anything. Don't say anything. I'll be hurt. Yeah, but just, do you know what I mean? I think the film will come out at the end of the year or early 2021 online. So, yeah.
Thank you. Were there more questions?
Yeah.
Liz has got one more question to wrap us up. So, and then we will be watching films in a few minutes. Go ahead, Liz.
Okay.
Oh, how do I scroll in the chat? Uh-oh. Well, the question was, it was from one of the viewers. Oh, thank you. And it was, oh no, that wasn't the one I was thinking of. Well, it was about your thoughts about Michaela Cole bringing, it's based on the name of that book, but really her fight with Netflix and them wanting to keep the copyright and her being able to take it to BBC. Does anybody else see? Okay. So it says, what do you think about the strategies Michaela Cole had to enact to get I Might Destroy You picked up, considering the negotiations with Netflix that refused her retainment of copyright versus BBC, who ultimately picked up the show and allowed for her to keep her rights?
Yeah. I say, listen, she did good. She did good. She walked away from a lot of money. Do you know what I mean? And she has that vision of what she wants to produce and what she wants to own. And one of the most important things that we have to remember, particularly as Black creatives, is the IP, the intellectual property. We need to hang on to that. Do you know what I mean? Like, they can give you £1 million and you'd be like, okay, yeah, I've got £1 million, blah, 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 blah. You spend it, you spend it, you spend it. That IP is going to be theirs forever. Do you know what I mean? From that one IP, they can make a series, they can make a film, they can spin it off into this, they could take one character out of it and make a series. Do you know what I mean? They could rinse that out. You know, once they've got your IP, do you know what I mean? So for them to not allow her to retain any rights at all, because I know she went down to 0.5% or 0.1% of the rights, and they said no. I think she made the right decision for her. Do you know what I mean? I think it just depends on where you are in your career. You know, like if Netflix offered me £1 million, I think I'd find it really hard to say no, to be honest. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, you know, where I am in my career and where I'm at the early stages of my career, I don't know. You know, but I do really admire her because she hung on to the IP, and they keep saying content. What we need to remember is content that we own. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, there's lots and lots of content. Who owns the content? Do you know what I mean? And how you build a company. One of the things I want to do at the moment is I'm really thinking about how I can build my company. Do you know what I mean? Like trying to get investment, trying to talk to people, because I want to keep hold of the IP that I'm creating. Do you know what I mean? Because I want to have that in 10 years' time. Oh, we can do a refresh of that idea, or we can, do you know what I mean? And that's how these companies get bigger and bigger and bigger because you have one hit. Do you know what I mean? And you can, you know, look at Cheers. Cheers begat Frasier. Do you know what I mean? Two massive, massive things from one IP. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like I think a lot of people don't think about intellectual property. And I think what Michaela Cohen's done is she's reminded us, do you know what I mean, that there is value in keeping control. You know, so I say, yeah, you know, good for her. She did the right thing for her. Yeah, and we all woke up and went, huh?
I tell artists all the time, don't give up your copyright, no matter what you do.
Yeah, if you can, keep it. Yeah.
Veronica, Liz, thank you so much for joining us. We will let you crawl back into your bed. Hopefully you can 4 hours of sleep. You did an amazing job keeping your eyes.
Wow. Thank you so much for inviting me.
We look forward to seeing more of your work and to supporting you in whatever way we can. So as we always say to our Seattle Black Film Festival official selection directors, keep in touch, keep us posted, and we will be there with our thumbs liking the hell out of anything that you produce. Well, it's you know, it's a small thing we can do that has a big impact in our whole audience as well. So thank you for joining us. Congratulations on a really, really incredible work. We're so excited to share it with our audience.
Yeah, and also the audience questions have really made me think. Do you know what I mean?
Great.
So yeah, so I just think, you can DM me. People want to DM me or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Then they can. I'm sure I won't be inundated. But no, I really appreciate the questions, and it kind of made me think. It kind of made my brain work. So yeah, but enjoy. I hope you enjoy. Thank you so much.
And audience, keep in mind, we will archive this chat on the Langston Seattle website, so you'll be able to watch it again and again and again and learn all kinds of great things over and over again from Veronica. Check her out on social media. And thank you for joining us. Like I said, we're signing off for Seattle Black Film Festival 2020. Thank you to everyone who helped make this possible despite crazy, crazy world situations. We're so glad people could join us, and keep it real, keep working hard, my dear Black artists. It's beautiful what's happening. I'm so inspired. We're inspired, and can't wait for next year to put some more great work out there. Enjoy the films this evening, and see you all very soon. Keep in touch on langstonseattle.org. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.